The boy had been looking forward to this day for a long time. He had counted every coin in his little jar, saving up from his allowance and odd jobs around the neighborhood. Today he was finally going to buy a burger all by himself, a small but important achievement for him. He wanted something special, something that made him feel proud. As he walked to the small fast food restaurant down the street, he held his money tightly in his hand, careful not to drop it. The sun was shining and everything seemed perfect. When he entered the restaurant, the smell of fried food and fresh bread made him smile. He could hear the chatter of families enjoying their meals and the occasional laughter of children running around. He felt a warm, happy feeling, a sense of comfort in this ordinary little place. It wasn't a fancy restaurant, but to him, it felt like a world of his own. He stood in line looking at the menu with wide eyes. He finally decided on a cheeseburger with fries and a small soda, a simple choice, but one he had been dreaming about for days. When he got to the counter, he handed over his carefully saved coins. The cashier, a friendly young woman, smiled and handed him his food. The boy thanked her and went over to a small table near the window. He carefully unwrapped his burger, savoring the moment. For a few minutes it was just him, the warm sun on his face and the smell of his food. He took a bite and it tasted exactly as he had imagined. It was perfect. He was proud of himself. But that peaceful moment didn't last long. The bell above the door rang and a group of bikers walked in. They were loud and imposing, their leather jackets and tattoos giving them a rough, threatening look. The boy noticed them immediately, but he tried to ignore them, hoping they wouldn't bother him. He focused on his burger, thinking that if he kept to himself, everything would be fine. Unfortunately, it wasn't fine. One of the bikers, a tall man with a deep voice and a sneer on his face, noticed the boy sitting alone. He walked over and grabbed the boy's burger from the table, holding it high so everyone could see. The other bikers laughed loudly, some pointing and making rude gestures. The boy's eyes widened in shock and fear. He didn't know what to do. His hands shook and his heart raced. He wanted to cry but tried to hold back the tears, hoping that somehow the situation would resolve itself. The tall biker didn't stop there. He dropped the burger on the floor with a loud thud, laughing as it landed in a messy pile. The boy stared at the ruined food, feeling a mixture of anger, sadness, and humiliation. He had worked so hard for that burger, and now it was gone, thrown away like it meant nothing. The other customers in the restaurant watched, some whispering to each other, some looking away. No one moved to stop the bikers. The boy felt completely alone, even though the room was full of people. A few minutes later, the boy quietly picked up his small soda, the only thing left from his meal, and tried to sip it, hoping to find some comfort. But the bikers weren't finished. They continued to make fun of him, shouting insults about how he didn't belong there, how he was weak, and how no one would stand up for him. The boy's face burned with embarrassment. His cheeks felt hot, and he wished he could disappear. He wanted to run out of the restaurant and never come back. The words and laughter of the bikers echoed in his mind, making him feel small and worthless. The cashier and a few of the staff tried to intervene, asking the bikers to leave and telling them that their behavior was not acceptable. But the bikers just laughed louder and ignored them. Their intimidation was overwhelming. They seemed to enjoy the fear they were causing, feeding off the boy's discomfort. The boy, still holding his soda, tried to stay out of the way, hoping that somehow they would leave on their own. But it felt like hours, even though it was only a few minutes. Every second dragged on, each laugh and insult piercing his confidence. As he sat there, the boy remembered the stories his parents had told him about standing up for what is right. He remembered their advice about courage and not letting bullies control his life. But he was just a boy, and these men were big and scary. He felt powerless. He wanted someone to come and help him, to tell these bikers that what they were doing was wrong. But for a moment it seemed like no one would. The fear in the boy's chest grew heavier with each passing second. Finally, the boy couldn't take it anymore. He quietly got up from his seat and walked toward the door. His small feet moved quickly, almost running, as he tried to escape the scene that had become unbearable. He didn't even look back. The bikers continued to laugh and shout after him, but he focused on getting outside, on feeling the air on his face again. Outside, he took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of emotions inside him. He felt sadness, anger, and fear all at once. He felt like the world was unfair, like no one cared if a child was treated with respect. The boy's parents were waiting nearby, having heard the commotion from the restaurant. When they saw him, their hearts ached. They could see the fear and shame in his eyes. They hugged him tightly, telling him that it wasn't his fault, that he had done nothing wrong, and that the people who treated him badly were the ones in the wrong. They reassured him that the world was not always like this, that there were good people who would stand up for him, even if they weren't there at that moment. The boy listened to their words, but he still felt the sting of humiliation. He thought about how excited he had been to enjoy his burger, how proud he had felt for saving his money, and how quickly that happiness had been stolen from him. He felt a mix of emotions that he couldn't yet put into words. His parents promised him they would find a way to make things right, that someone would help him, that he wouldn't have to feel this helpless ever again. Over the next few days, the boy couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. He thought about the bikers, their laughter, and the way they had made him feel so small. He replayed the moment over and over, wishing he had been braver or that someone had been there to protect him. He also thought about the restaurant staff who had tried to help, and the strangers who had watched but hadn't stepped in. He realized how much the support of others mattered, how important it was to have someone stand up when things go wrong. Even though he felt hurt, the boy also began to feel a spark of determination. He didn't want this experience to define him. He didn't want to live in fear or feel ashamed because of what the bikers had done. Deep down, he hoped that someone would see what happened, that someone who cared about right and wrong would intervene. He imagined a person stepping in, someone strong and kind who could make the situation better. This thought gave him a small sense of hope, something he could hold on to in the days that followed. And in the background, as the boy tried to rebuild his confidence, the story quietly began to spread. A few customers had recorded the incident on their phones, capturing the bikers' behavior and the boy's humiliation. The video started to circulate online, shared with comments of outrage, sympathy, and support. Strangers expressed how terrible it was that a child had been treated this way. Many felt anger on his behalf, and some even vowed to help if they could. The boy's story, once private and painful, was becoming something larger, something that could draw attention to the injustice he had suffered. Little did he know that this incident, which had filled him with fear and shame, would soon catch the attention of someone extraordinary. Someone who had the power to step in and make a difference, someone who had spent years advocating against bullying and standing up for the vulnerable. The boy had no idea that in a short time, his story would take a turn he could never have imagined, that the fear and humiliation he felt today would be met with courage, kindness, and protection in a way that would change his life forever. After the incident, the boy couldn't stop thinking about what had happened in the restaurant. Every time he closed his eyes, he could see the bikers' sneering faces, hear their laughter, and remember the way they had thrown his burger on the floor. It was not just the burger that hurt him. It was the way they had humiliated him in front of everyone. He felt small, weak, and scared, and he didn't know how to make sense of it. He tried to go back to his normal routine, but the memory of that day kept haunting him. His parents noticed that something had changed in him. The boy, who was usually cheerful and energetic, now seemed quieter, more withdrawn. He barely smiled, and he refused to talk about the incident at first. His parents were worried. They wanted to protect him, but they also knew that running away from the problem would not help. They encouraged him to speak about his feelings, assuring him that it was not his fault and that they were there for him no matter what. Slowly, the boy began to open up. He told them about the fear he had felt, the anger at the bikers, and the shame that seemed to stick to him even after leaving the restaurant. Meanwhile, the video of the incident that some customers had recorded began to circulate online. People were shocked and outraged. Many viewers expressed their sympathy for the boy and their anger at the bikers' behavior. The video quickly spread through social media platforms. It wasn't long before hashtags about the incident began appearing, with people sharing messages about bullying, racism, and standing up for children. Some strangers even reached out to the boy's family privately, offering support and advice. The boy's parents were both worried and hopeful. They were worried about the attention their child was getting online, concerned that the bikers or their friends might see the posts and react negatively. At the same time, they were hopeful because the support from strangers showed them that there were people who cared about what had happened. They realized that the story could bring awareness to bullying and racism, and they hoped that it would make a difference, not just for their son, but for other children as well. In the days that followed, Local news outlets picked up the story. A reporter visited the restaurant to speak to the staff and the customers who had witnessed the incident. The boy's parents were cautious but agreed to speak, hoping that sharing their experience could prevent something similar from happening to other children. The interview was short but powerful. The boy's parents described the fear and humiliation their child had experienced, highlighting the importance of standing up against bullying and treating every person with respect. People in the community were deeply affected by the story. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers expressed their support for the boy and his family. Some sent letters and small gifts to encourage him, reminding him that he was not alone. The boy began to feel a small sense of relief, knowing that there were people who cared, people who were angry at the injustice he had faced, helped him feel that maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't entirely unfair. Among the many comments and shares online, one stood out. Several people tagged John Cena, the famous wrestler and actor, in posts about the incident. They knew him not just as a celebrity, but as someone who had spent years advocating against bullying and promoting kindness. Many wrote, hoping he would see the video and perhaps do something to help the boy. The post caught the attention of Cena's team, and soon enough the story reached him directly. When John Cena saw the video, he was deeply moved. He could see the fear and sadness in the boy's eyes, the way the bikers had tried to break his spirit. Cena had always believed in standing up for the vulnerable, and this situation hit him hard. He immediately contacted the boy's parents, offering his support. He wanted to make sure the boy knew that he was not alone, and that someone was willing to step in and protect him. The boy's parents were overwhelmed when they heard from Cena. At first, they thought it might be a scam or a misunderstanding, but after speaking to him directly, they realized he genuinely cared. Cena spoke calmly and kindly, assuring them that he would handle the situation with respect and make sure the boy felt safe. For the first time since the incident, the boy's parents felt a sense of hope. They could see that their child was going to have someone powerful on his side, someone who would stand up against the injustice he had suffered. In the days leading up to Cena's visit, the community's excitement grew. News outlets continued covering the story, focusing on the boy's courage and the support he was receiving from people around the country. The boy began to feel a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. He was still scared of the bikers, but the idea that someone like Cena was coming to help gave him a new sense of strength. He kept imagining what it would be like to finally feel safe and to have someone stand up for him publicly. At school, the boy's classmates had mixed reactions. Some were kind and supportive, offering words of encouragement and telling him how brave he was for going through such a difficult experience. Others were curious, asking questions about what had happened. The boy learned to answer calmly, not letting the incident define him, but sharing enough to educate others about bullying and racism. His teachers noticed a change in him as well. They saw that despite the fear and embarrassment, he was beginning to find his voice and confidence again. The family also made preparations for Cena's visit. They talked to the boy about what to expect, helping him feel ready for the experience. They emphasized that he should be proud of himself for handling the situation with courage, for seeking support, and for letting others know about the injustice. They reminded him that it was okay to feel nervous and that he didn't have to face the bikers or the public alone. As the day approached, the boy felt a mix of emotions. Excitement, nervousness, and hope swirled inside him. He couldn't stop thinking about what it would mean to have someone like Cena stand beside him, to show the bikers and the community that bullying and racism were not acceptable. He imagined walking back into the restaurant, this time with strength, with people who cared about him, and with someone who could confront the bullies in a way he never could. Meanwhile, the bikers remained unaware of the growing attention their actions had received. They did not know that the video had gone viral, that people were speaking out against them, or that John Cena was preparing to intervene. Their laughter and arrogance in the restaurant had seemed powerful at the time, but outside of that space, their behavior had sparked outrage and inspired support for the boy. The boy's parents tried to explain to him that sometimes people who seem strong and frightening in the moment can be held accountable when the right people step in. They reminded him that he was not responsible for their actions and that he had done nothing wrong. Slowly, the boy began to internalize this. He realized that while he had been hurt, the attention and support he was receiving meant that the world could be just, and that goodness could prevail over cruelty. Finally, the day of Cena's visit arrived. The boy's anticipation was high, but so was his nervousness. He had seen pictures of Cena and knew about his reputation for helping people and standing against bullying. But meeting him in person was something entirely different. He wondered if Cena would really understand what had happened, if he would see the fear and humiliation, and if he could really help him feel safe again. As he waited, surrounded by his parents and a few friendly faces from the community, the boy felt a mix of hope and anxiety. The story that had caused him so much pain was about to reach a turning point. He thought about the video, the posts online, and all the people who had supported him. For the first time in days, he felt like he was not alone. Someone was going to stand beside him, to make sure the bullies knew their behavior was unacceptable, and to remind him that he deserved respect, dignity, and safety. Little did the boy know, this was just the beginning. The next moments would not only change how he felt about himself, but also show the entire community that courage, support, and kindness could overcome fear and humiliation. The boy was about to experience a moment that would stay with him for the rest of his life. A moment that would turn his pain into a story of hope, resilience, and the power of standing up for what is right. The day John Cena arrived felt surreal for the boy and his parents. From the moment they heard that Cena had seen the video and wanted to help, their lives had been a whirlwind of phone calls, messages, and planning. Now, as they stood outside the restaurant, they could see a black SUV pull up, and for a moment the boy felt his heart skip a beat. He had seen Cena on television, in movies, and in wrestling arenas, but now he was right in front of him, here to stand beside him. Cena stepped out of the car with a calm, confident presence. He smiled warmly at the boy and his parents, his eyes kind and reassuring. For the first time since the incident, the boy felt a flicker of relief. This wasn't just a famous person coming to see him. This was someone who genuinely cared about what had happened. Someone who had taken action to protect him. Cena knelt slightly to be at eye level with the boy and spoke softly, saying, "I'm here with you. You didn't do anything wrong, and no one should ever make you feel small." The boy looked up at him, unsure if this was real. He nodded slowly, still overwhelmed by the emotions swirling inside him. Fear, hope, relief, and nervousness all mixed together, but Cena's calm and steady words made him feel safe. For the first time in days, he felt that maybe he could face the bikers without being scared, knowing that someone strong and kind was there to support him. Cena didn't waste time. He and the boy's parents walked inside the restaurant together. The moment the door opened, the atmosphere shifted. The bikers, who had been sitting casually near the back, suddenly noticed Cena. Their laughter faded, replaced by a sense of unease. Cena didn't yell or act aggressively. He simply walked with authority, his presence alone demanding attention. He glanced at the boy, giving him a reassuring nod, silently telling him to stay strong. When they reached the table where the incident had occurred, Cena addressed the bikers directly. His voice was calm but firm. "What you did was wrong. You humiliated a child, and no one should ever be treated like that. It's not just disrespectful, it's cruel." The bikers shifted uncomfortably. They hadn't expected this level of attention, and certainly not from someone like Cena, who had a reputation for standing up against bullying. The boy watched silently, gripping his mother's hand. He felt a mix of pride and nervousness. Pride because someone so important was standing up for him, and nervousness because he still feared what the bikers might do. But Cena's presence gave him courage. He realized that he didn't have to face them alone anymore. Cena continued, speaking to the entire restaurant now, his tone calm but commanding. "Everyone deserves to feel safe and respected. Bullying and humiliation have no place here or anywhere. We all have a responsibility to stand up when we see wrong." His words were not just directed at the bikers, but at the bystanders too. People in the restaurant nodded quietly, some even applauding softly. The boy could feel the energy in the room change. The fear that had once filled him was slowly being replaced by a sense of justice. The bikers, realizing they had no support and that their actions were being called out publicly, finally spoke. One muttered an apology, but it sounded forced and insincere. Cena responded calmly but firmly, saying, "An apology only matters if it's genuine. You need to understand the impact of your actions and make sure it never happens again." The bikers looked down, embarrassed, realizing that their behavior had consequences far beyond what they had imagined. Cena then turned his attention back to the boy. "You were brave by just being yourself," he said. "You didn't deserve what happened, and no one should ever make you feel small. Remember this. Courage isn't about fighting back with anger. It's about standing tall even when others try to bring you down." The boy listened carefully, absorbing every word. He felt a warmth in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced since the incident. For the first time, he felt empowered rather than defeated. After speaking with the bikers, Cena took the boy to a quieter corner of the restaurant. He wanted to make sure the child felt safe and heard, away from the tension that still lingered at the table. They talked about fear, courage, and the importance of speaking up. Cena shared stories of times when he had faced bullies and how he had learned to stand strong without hurting anyone. He explained that standing up for yourself didn't always mean confrontation. Sometimes it meant seeking help, as the boy had done by letting others know what happened. The boy began to smile for the first time in days. He realized that while the bikers had tried to shame him, they had failed in a much bigger way. By reacting with cruelty, they had sparked a chain of events that brought support, attention, and courage into his life. Cena's presence showed him that even in moments of fear, there could be heroes, people willing to step in and fight for what is right. The restaurant staff and a few customers came over to meet Cena and the boy. They offered words of encouragement, telling the boy how proud they were of him. Some even shared personal stories about times they had faced bullying or injustice. The boy listened, feeling a connection to the people around him. He realized that his experience, while painful, could also inspire others and bring a sense of community. Cena suggested a small gesture to turn the moment into something positive. The restaurant staff offered the boy a fresh burger and fries free of charge. Cena smiled and said, "You earned this, not just for today but for being brave and standing strong." The boy's eyes lit up. He felt a mix of relief, joy, and pride. This simple act, which might seem small to others, was a powerful symbol for him. It represented care, support, and the idea that kindness could triumph over cruelty. The bikers quietly left the restaurant, their laughter and arrogance replaced by silence and reflection. They had been confronted not with violence but with dignity and authority. The boy watched them leave, feeling a sense of closure. For the first time, he realized that what had happened to him did not define him. He had survived, been supported, and learned a valuable lesson about courage and resilience. After the bikers left, Cena stayed with the boy for a while longer. They talked about school, hobbies, and dreams for the future. Cena emphasized the importance of believing in oneself and seeking support when needed. The boy listened intently, asking questions and sharing his thoughts. It was a conversation full of warmth and understanding, leaving the boy with a sense of hope and confidence that he hadn't felt in a long time. News crews outside had captured the interaction, showing the community and the world how one person's courage and kindness could make a real difference. The boy's story was no longer just about fear and humiliation. It had become a story of hope, support, and the power of standing up for what is right. People across the city were inspired by the boy's bravery and by Cena's willingness to intervene. By the end of the day, the boy felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. He had faced his fears in a way he never imagined possible. He had learned that seeking help was not a sign of weakness but a demonstration of strength. And he had experienced firsthand how one person's actions could change the course of events. Not just for him, but for everyone who witnessed it. As Cena prepared to leave, he knelt once again beside the boy and said, "Remember this day. Remember that courage and kindness can make a difference. And remember, you are never alone." The boy nodded, a genuine smile spreading across his face. For the first time in days, he felt a sense of peace. He felt protected, understood, and valued. The boy's parents thanked Cena repeatedly, their hearts full of gratitude. They knew that this day would be remembered forever, not just for the boy but for their entire family. They realized that courage, kindness, and standing up for what is right could create ripples that went far beyond a single incident. Walking home that evening, the boy felt a lightness in his step. The fear and shame that had weighed him down for days had been replaced by confidence and hope. He looked forward to the future, knowing that even in moments of injustice there were people willing to stand beside him, people who believed in doing what was right. And most importantly, he knew that he too could be brave, that he could face challenges with dignity, and that he had a voice that mattered. The day had started with fear and humiliation, but it ended with courage, support, and a renewed belief in goodness. The boy had experienced the power of standing up for what is right, the impact of compassion, and the importance of having allies in moments of difficulty. It was a day that would stay with him forever, shaping the way he viewed himself, the world, and the value of courage. After John Cena's intervention, the boy's life slowly began to feel normal again, but in a way that was different from before. The fear and humiliation that had weighed heavily on him for days were gradually replaced by a sense of pride and confidence. He began to see that the world wasn't just a place filled with people who could hurt you. There were also people who could protect, encourage, and inspire you. That realization changed the way he looked at himself and at those around him. The community around the restaurant had not forgotten the incident either. People from the neighborhood who had witnessed the bullying or heard about it online started reaching out. Some brought small gifts for the boy, a book, a drawing, or even a handwritten note with words of encouragement. Others came simply to meet him and share how proud they were of his courage. The boy was amazed at how many people cared, people who had no personal connection to him but were touched by what he had experienced. At school, the boy noticed a change as well. Teachers and classmates treated him differently, not because they pitied him, but because they respected his resilience. Some students approached him quietly in the hallways, asking how he was feeling or telling him that they had seen the news about what happened. The boy began to realize that his story could actually help others. He could show that even when life feels unfair and frightening, there are ways to overcome challenges and stand strong. The restaurant where the incident had occurred became a place of community support. The staff and management wanted to turn what had been a painful experience into something positive. They organized a small gathering to celebrate the boy's courage, inviting neighbors, local leaders, and even a few journalists. The goal wasn't to draw attention to the bikers or the humiliation, but to focus on resilience, kindness, and the power of standing up for what is right. The boy was hesitant at first. He was still shy and nervous, worried about speaking in front of a crowd, but his parents encouraged him, reminding him how brave he had already been and how many people were eager to support him. On the day of the gathering, he walked into the restaurant with his family, holding his parents' hands tightly. His eyes widened as he saw so many familiar and friendly faces gathered just for him. It felt strange at first, but also comforting. He realized that he wasn't alone in his journey. During the event, people shared their stories and messages of support. Some talked about times when they had faced bullying or discrimination, and how they had learned to overcome it. Others spoke about the importance of kindness and standing up for those who can't defend themselves. The boy listened carefully, feeling inspired by their words. For the first time, he began to see that his experience wasn't just about what had happened to him. It was about the lessons he could take forward and the difference he could make in other people's lives. John Cena returned for the gathering, not as a celebrity, but as someone who genuinely cared about the boy's well-being. He spoke about courage, resilience, and the power of community support. He emphasized that no child should ever feel humiliated or unsafe, and that it was everyone's responsibility to look out for one another. His words resonated deeply with the boy in the audience. The boy felt a sense of pride swelling inside him. He realized that he had not been a passive victim. He had been brave, and now he had the chance to inspire others. The boy was given the opportunity to speak at the event. His voice was quiet at first, but as he looked around the room and saw the supportive faces, he gained confidence. He talked about the day of the incident, the fear he had felt, and how John Cena had helped him feel safe again. He spoke about the importance of standing up against bullying and treating everyone with respect. His words were simple but powerful, and they moved everyone in the room. People clapped and cheered, not just for him but for the courage it took to share his story openly. After the event, the boy's parents noticed a change in him. He walked taller, spoke with more confidence, and even smiled more often. The sense of shame that had followed him for days had faded. He realized that one act of cruelty could never define him, but one act of kindness, courage, and support could shape his entire perspective on life. He had learned that strength wasn't about physical power. It was about resilience, compassion, and the willingness to stand tall even when others tried to bring you down. The community continued to support the boy in small but meaningful ways. Neighbors checked in on him. Local businesses offered encouragement, and even strangers sent messages of hope. The boy began to see that his experience had created a ripple effect. His story, once a private moment of fear and humiliation, had inspired others to stand up against bullying and injustice in their own lives. It showed him the importance of community and the power of coming together to support those in need. The boy also began to think about the bikers in a new way. He realized that while they had caused him pain, they had also inadvertently helped him discover his own strength and the support of others. He didn't feel anger anymore, not in the way that would hurt him. Instead, he felt a quiet understanding that not everyone chooses kindness, but that people like John Cena and his community choose to act with courage and compassion. That realization gave him a sense of peace and closure. With this newfound confidence, the boy started sharing his experience with other children. He spoke at school assemblies and community events, explaining what had happened and what he had learned. He encouraged other kids to speak up when they faced bullying and to seek help from people they trusted. His story became a lesson in resilience, teaching that even in moments of fear and humiliation, there are ways to find courage and support. The boy also developed a stronger bond with his parents. They had been his safe place throughout the ordeal, and together they navigated the challenges and emotions of the situation. The experience brought them closer, strengthening their trust and communication. The parents felt proud of their child, not just for surviving a difficult situation, but for learning valuable lessons about courage, empathy, and the importance of standing up for oneself and others. The restaurant continued to celebrate the boy's courage. They put up a small display honoring him, showing photos from the event and messages of support from the community. The boy felt proud every time he visited. The display reminded him that even in a moment of fear and humiliation, there was hope, support, and a chance to turn things around. It became a symbol of resilience, not just for him, but for everyone who saw it. As the weeks passed, the boy's life returned to a sense of normalcy. He went back to school, played with friends, and enjoyed simple pleasures like reading, drawing, and spending time with his family. But he was changed. He carried with him the lessons of courage, resilience, and community support. He understood that life could be unfair, but that kindness, bravery, and standing up for what is right could make a difference. The boy also realized that he had the power to inspire others. His story showed that even the smallest acts of cruelty could be met with courage and support, and that standing up for what is right could change lives. He learned that heroes aren't just famous people like John Cena. Heroes are also ordinary people who choose to act with kindness, courage, and empathy when they see someone in need. By the end of this journey, the boy had transformed his fear and humiliation into confidence and purpose. He had learned that seeking help was a sign of strength, that community support could create change, and that one person's courage could inspire many. His experience had turned into a story of hope, resilience, and the power of kindness. It showed that even in the darkest moments there is light, and that with the right support anyone can overcome fear and stand tall. The boy knew that this experience would stay with him forever. It had shaped the way he saw himself, his community, and the importance of courage and kindness. He understood that while cruelty and bullying exist, there is also compassion, support, and heroism in the world. And most importantly, he knew that he had the strength to face challenges, the courage to speak up, and the ability to inspire others, just as he had been inspired. The weeks and months after the incident brought many changes for the boy. He had faced something terrifying, something that could have made him afraid of the world, but instead it had shaped him into a stronger, braver person. Each day he felt more confident and more aware of the importance of standing up for himself and others. The support he had received from his parents, the community, and John Cena had left a lasting mark on him. He realized that even when life seems unfair, there are people who care, and their actions can change everything. At school, the boy's story became an inspiration. Teachers used his experience as a lesson in kindness, empathy, and resilience. Students would approach him in the hallways, asking questions about what had happened, wanting to know how he had found the courage to face such a frightening situation. The boy shared his experience carefully, focusing not on fear or anger, but on the lessons he had learned. He explained how seeking help, accepting support, and speaking up could make a difference. Other children began to see him not just as a classmate, but as someone who had turned a painful moment into a story of hope. The boy also became more involved in community events. Local organizations invited him to speak about bullying, about resilience, and about standing up against injustice. At first he felt nervous, unsure if he could really make an impact. But each time he spoke, he gained confidence. He realized that his voice mattered, and that sharing his story could help other children who might be experiencing fear or humiliation. With each talk, he inspired more people, showing them that even in moments of vulnerability, strength could emerge. His parents noticed a profound change in him. He was more assertive, more willing to speak up when he saw something wrong, and more compassionate toward others. They saw their child grow into someone who understood that courage wasn't about fighting or being loud. It was about standing firm, asking for help when needed, and treating others with respect. They felt proud, knowing that their child had turned a difficult experience into a source of strength and inspiration. The restaurant continued to celebrate the boy's courage. They kept the small display of photos and messages from the community, reminding everyone who visited that even the smallest acts of cruelty could be met with resilience and support. People often came by to see the boy and hear his story, and he shared it openly, encouraging kindness and empathy. The once painful memory of the burger incident had become a symbol of hope, a story that showed how people could come together to make a positive difference. Over time, the boy also reflected on the bikers and what had happened that day. He realized that while they had caused him pain, they had also unintentionally shown him the importance of standing up for himself and seeking help. He no longer felt anger in the way that hurt him. Instead, he felt understanding. Not everyone chooses kindness, but he had learned that there are always people who will stand up for what is right, even if the moment seems small or ordinary. That understanding brought him a sense of peace and closure. The boy also discovered the power of connection and community. People who had reached out to him after the incident, whether neighbors, strangers, or community members, had shown him that life is filled with support and care, even when cruelty exists. He learned that he didn't have to face challenges alone, and that asking for help was not a weakness but a form of strength. The kindness and encouragement he received became a foundation for his confidence, something he carried into every part of his life. One day, the boy received a message from John Cena himself. Cena wanted to know how he was doing and how he had been feeling since the incident. The boy felt a rush of excitement and gratitude. He responded, telling Cena about the school events he had spoken at, the friends he had made, and how he had learned to be brave and kind. Cena replied with words of encouragement, reminding him that bravery and empathy were two of the most powerful tools a person could have. The boy felt proud knowing that someone he admired so much had noticed his growth and believed in him. The boy's experience also had a lasting effect on his peers. Students at his school became more aware of the impact of bullying and the importance of standing up for one another. Teachers noticed that children were more willing to support classmates who were being mistreated and to speak up when they saw unfairness. The boy's story had created a ripple effect, inspiring others to act with courage and compassion. It was a reminder that even a single experience could touch many lives and create change far beyond what anyone might expect.